Hey Peyton, nice to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time with a quote by Shunryu Suzuki, who writes, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's, there are few." How does it all relate, Peyton? What is the beginner's mind for you?
Great to be back with you, man. This is such a wonderful framing of this experience, beginner's mind. There's so many ways to point to what it feels like to have beginner's mind. And beginner's mind is lovely in part because it's kind of vivid. You can tap into the experience of being thrown into this moment with no past here, no future here, just this kind of arising fresh newness or this nowness of direct experience and the wholeness of unfolding reality. And it also is great because it somehow carries with it in this phrase beginner's mind the sense of the clearing of what gets in the way of beginner's mind, namely our thought structures, identity, concept of past and future, linear time are separating and dividing ourselves from the wholeness now in this quote unquote expert's mind, or this way that we try to impose our ideas upon our direct experience and thereby cut ourselves off from it to some degree. And so many possibilities of beginner's mind. What does that mean? Few possibilities of expert mind. What does that mean? I think in part it points to the infinite creativity of the flow. When we are acting spontaneously in the now, the potential for creation, for something new that is self emergent from the pure flow, from the now that we are thrown into. There are so many possibilities for creation to emerge with a sense and a wisdom and a range that we can't muster by trying to effort and structure something into existence. Whereas when I'm in expert mind mode and I have everything figured out and I'm determining the next step and I already have the sequence in my brain way of being, then I'm much more limited. It's like there's a hose and I'm constricting it, and not much can flow through when I'm constricting it with all of the ideas and thoughts and frameworks, identities, concepts of past and future that I'm superimposing or that I'm blocking the flow with. And it's a little bit of an unlearning to come back to beginner's mind, to open ourselves to beginner's mind. How do we do
Mhm.
this? Unlearning. And how do we recognize beginner's mind or orient ourselves toward this way of being?
Well, a few words are interesting to watch out for. If someone says this is impossible, then probably is only impossible in his or her mind because of his rigidity in terms of world models and the way in which he sees the world. And watching out for these words of not possible, or how should that be possible, or like questioning the doability of an approach or whatever. There we can find out, okay, this is probably a limitation, which is maybe a self-fulfilling prophecy. So with the language, we can find it out. With our own mind, we also can find it out in terms of how do we approach the situation. A little bit of self-awareness makes us more prone to realizing that we probably do not see everything. And when we live in our story, then we have like a framework, and it sometimes helps. But if we live too much in the story and the frameworks becomes the world how we see it, the map becomes our reality, then we are limiting ourselves because we won't dive into the detail of the real world. We won't dive into the detail of the structure which emerges just in front of what we could realize, and what we could explore if we would dive into what we experience now. Every now we experience, it is this beginning of infinity. It is this emergence of so many possibilities. But if we are in a robotic structure where we just do the same thing every day, go to work at 15 every day into the same seat every day, and it's kind of this frame which keeps us going, which keeps us moving, which keeps our momentum alive. But there's also this rigidity. If we do it unconsciously, then there are only a few possibilities of how our day will unfold, because we can predict that we will do the stuff we do according to the script in which we live. To break out of that is more like to live in the now, to do something which is unpredictable, to flaneur through a city you've never been visiting, to just invite some randomness. So how do we do that, inviting randomness and opening up for infinity? And what is the balance between how much structure, how much optionality should we allow into our lives to open up to the beginner's mind again? Peyton.
Great questions. I do think that your question points to some kind of a recognition of the different ways of being. Sometimes, actually, it's helpful to be in quote unquote expert's mind or planner mind or analyze mind. These are tools that we have for a reason. It's not that we're meant to completely throw them away. I think that the correction that I need, that many of us need as it relates to this concept of beginner's mind, is to recognize that one, the map is not the territory. And if we live in expert's mind all the time, we are, as they say, taking in the vast sky of reality through a straw, that in fact it's terribly limiting to put this opaque layer of concepts between us and our experience of reality. And it's incredibly limiting in the fruit of what we're capable of. It causes us to be far more fragile. It causes us to feel less of the nuance. We cannot flow with the same level of productivity or creativity or wisdom if we are locked into this left brain way of being, living through our concepts and plans, trying to control reality. And so to come to beginner's mind, there is not so much a heroic accomplishment or a doing. It's much more like an undoing, an unlearning, a letting go. And to do all of those things, trust or faith or surrender is paramount. It's essential because if you don't have a sense of trust in the unfolding reality or in beginner's mind itself or the flow itself or the spirit or the light or whatever you want to call the emanating movement of now reality that we can align ourselves with and unify ourselves with, if we don't have a trust in that and we are trying with part of us to cling on to what we are trying to hold on to protect ourselves with our own strength, to tense up against any sense of vulnerability, then we will lock up and rigidify and we won't be able to flow with and as and of the flow. It requires a sort of suppleness in giving ourselves to the moment to really abide in beginner's mind, even while we are in movement. I think too, there are some skillful elements or just real practical tools of coming to beginner's mind. So one, we know that we can't learn our way there. We can't work our way there through effort, and that it almost always requires relinquishing some degree of effort or struggling that we currently have. It's some ease-based way of being, and it is ultimately direct. And so one thing, even before talking about this, that we did was take a few deep breaths and reconnect with the now consciously to realize that my mind is going through a lot of thoughts and I'm very much an expert mind, thinking of past, future, linear time, concepts, stories, narratives. I can learn to observe that. And if I would like to return to a beginner's mind, the breath can be a lifeline that is always extended to us, always available to us to ground us with the moving now. And the other part of it that I would call out is the the accessibility of the nature of reality is baked into our lifeline of beginner's mind in the sense that we return to what's already here. We don't create beginner's mind when we come back to it. When we come back to the flow, when we come back to the now, We aren't heroically manufacturing it. We aren't making it where it wasn't already. We are ceasing to cut ourselves off from what is already always available. And when we pay close enough attention and we can allow the break in the cloud of our thoughts and allow the silence to emerge within the cacophony of our mental chatter, we can see that, hmm, we're kind of already here. That in every moment when we look, we see there is the now, there is this reality, there's this one field of vision, there's this one field of sensation, there's this everything that I'm hearing right now, that there's
Hmm.
already a unity, that there's already wholeness right here. And it's sort of like a experience we can learn to recognize more and more vividly, that in every moment I'm just thrown. I'm arriving here. I'm right here. I'm waking up and there's no past that I can see. There's no future that I can see. I can't touch the past. And in fact, the closer I look, the more that all I see is the one unified now. The more I see that I'm thrown and I'm already in the clearing. I'm already in beginner's mind right here. And then the trick is to, as they say, proceed with trust in the spontaneous unfolding, to not go back to my grasping for control, to not go back to my grasping to have a perfect map and narrative that figures everything out and to be the master of reality, but rather to proceed with trust, to give myself from my heart and allow myself to be breathed and moved and flowed by the unfolding unity of reality. This is the movement, this is the tapping in, this is the awakening into flow that is so, so fruitful in our lives, whether in motion or in stillness, whether in creativity or in peace. This is how we can tap into our true nature. How do you think about the practice of this? And how about the ways that we can know this, we can feel this, we can recognize this, and then we can forget about it for weeks at a time, or it can not be vivid sometimes. What about all that? How do we come back and have a good balance with this?
Well, there's Bruce Lee saying, empty your mind, become water, my friend. If water flows into the cup, it becomes the cup. It is like saying you will flow if you tap into that kind of experience, into that way and mode of being. And yeah, it's about being in the now and taking one deep breath, which is conscious. It is about maybe as well mindfulness practice. It's um, said that mindfulness practice also has ability to reduce stress in your overall life because your ability to detach from everything which triggers you is there. How does it emerge like that? It is because in between the trigger and your reaction, there's a space inside of you. And through that practice of coming back to the now, you widen this space in which you can control how you will react. So it is about practicing to widen your capability of experiencing the moment. If you can allow for that, you will need to allow for releasing thought patterns, releasing stories, releasing compulsive needs to do something, releasing the connection between the triggers, which may be internally, which may be externally, and your immediate reaction. To come back to a conscious decision which you make how you want to react, what you want your life to look like. And this requires as well to experience pain and not react immediately. This requires to widen your negative capability in terms of taking stuff in which comes at you and hurts you and receiving it in a way that you are conscious about that it will pass, that is a momentary experience, that is as well an emotional experience. And you can deal with it because you could deal with it before. And with this basic practice, which may be as simple as just taking one breath, just as simple as one breath, which you feel the air flow somewhere on your nose or somewhere on your mouth, anything, or which you feel your body move, because when you breathe in, then your chest or belly rises. Or maybe as simple as just feeling your feet on the ground. This means coming back to the moment. This means widen the space and your capability of taking things in without unconsciously reacting just like that, but with your judgment applied, with your decision applied to it. And Peyton, what do you think about this, and how is your simple practice, or what else can people take away with just experiencing the flow?
Hmm. I'll offer some r- what I find really vivid pointers from the Christian tradition as it relates to beginner's mind. There's in Jesus' own language, Aramaic, this comes through super vividly. And some of my favorite glimpse practices. One is John 3:3, and kind of a blend. He says, Amen, I say unto you, unless someone is metil ed menderish, he will not see the Malkuta Dalaha, which translates to, truly I say unto you, unless someone is being born from the beginning, he will not see the king's reign of God. He will not see the king's reign of the sacred unity. And so being born from the beginning, the same root that's used in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created, this being born from the beginning points us to the same experience of beginner's mind, being born from the beginning as an active state of being freshly new. Nothing that we're holding on to, no linear time that we have. We're right here, right now at the first beginning. We're waking up and recognizing the unified reality, the whole reality now here at the first beginning, in the first beginning, in this sort of flow of now eternity. And another is in Matthew 6:22, he says, if your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. In this unity experience, this one vision experience, or one consciousness, one light that we can take in of our whole experience all at once. Unity is so intertwined with beginner's mind in the sense of arriving at eternity, arriving in the now, being in the state of being fully here. There is this unity element of all that is unfolding. It's a full giving ourselves unmediated connection with the sacred unity unfolding of reality. This is a really, and I personally find the Eastern traditions are so helpful to see this so clearly in stillness, and the Judeo-Christian traditions, in my experience, are so wonderful to experience this in motion in a way that it translates into movement, action, vitality in our lives. And it's such a simple, like it's not complex, it's not conceptual, it's not master this technique or anything like that. It's the opposite. It's a letting go of our complexity, letting go of our effort, letting go of our struggle, and accepting and opening to what's already fully available that we can never earn, but we can only receive and abide and move within by letting go of our rigidity. This is this being the living water and flowing, not tensing up, not rigidifying stance. And it's something that for sure, it's just elusive, or not elusive, but it's so hard to hold on to. Like by its nature, it comes and it goes, it seems. Some people have found this way to be there all the time, it seems like. But for most of us, it's this journey of tiny glimpse, tiny taste, then forget about it, then tiny glimpse, tiny taste, come back, and then forget about it forever, get super wrapped up in our shit, and then come back a little bit and be like, oh, this is great, this is a relief, or this is really helpful for this and that, and then come back. And so it's a dance that we do in our life. And like you said, we do, in fact, oftentimes use our expert mind. Now, ultimately, I think these things are compatible and can be there at once. But in practice, in my experience, a lot of times when I get really caught up in my planning, figuring out the future, I do divide myself from reality. I cut up reality, all of this. And so the dance, I think, is just remembering what is divine is already here. What is divine is always available. This great infinite resource is here. And this sense of trust that it is, in fact, infinite. And check it out. Like, see if it is true in our own experience. And we find that, oh, yeah, when I am in the flow, when I'm in beginner's mind, when I am awake, when I am abiding in the king's reign of God, then there is an infinite capacity for whatever arises, that whatever pain I experience, if I have a migraine, if I have anguish, if I feel this or that intense emotion, if I feel discouraged, if I feel overwhelmed, that all of that is already accepted in the moment of recognizing the context or the light that everything is appearing within and of. And so it's a coming back and returning to our true home for tiny pieces of time again and again and again on our way. And it's helpful to, I think, have play around with various glimpses of it, various practices of however we call it, unity or awakening or non-dual recognition or whatever, and play around with what resonates with us. How are we glimpsing, how are we tasting this stream and flow of living water, and amassing some helpful tools when we need the lifeline most, and the breath may be the most powerful resource of all on our way. Any thoughts or recommendations, practices, or final comments from you, my friend?
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing your glimpses into the Aramaic language and how the wisdom of this tradition translates into our lives now. For anyone who comes from the Christian tradition or is interested in experiencing a few glimpses of that kind, I highly recommend to check out the site Malkuta, which Peyton created, and share some Christian meditations on it, with meditations on words of the Aramaic language in which Jesus shared his wisdom and his glimpse into how to glimpse into the now, how to see eternity and the start of infinity from each moment, and how to have a beginner's mind about that. If you're interested, check it out. The link is in the show notes. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and ideas with me.
Likewise, my friend. Much appreciated as always. Really enjoyed the conversation. May we have beginner's mind. May we recognize that we don't know nothing and abide in the greatest gift that is already here. Talk to you soon, my friend.
Talk to you soon. Bye.